Okay, so last week we had a bunch of trouble with the internet. We don't actually know if it's the internet or our computer. We're going to have that looked at. The computer, I'm starting to think it's the computer, not the internet. So we're going to try to get that looked at this week. I'm going to go ahead and pick right back up, or not pick up, but start over from last week because there was just so much trouble. I don't even know that anything worked out. It was so buried in that other work I was doing. I didn't even get to watch the video this time, which I'm not real big on watching myself. I bore me very badly. Anyway, yeah, if you're having trouble sleeping, just listen to one of my teachings. It works for me. All right, so we're going to pick up with vaYiqra, which is Leviticus chapter 23, verse 36. So I'm going to back up to 35 and read my translation of that, just like normal. My translation of the Hebrew is, on the first day will be a holy meeting. You shall not do any of your occupational labor. I probably went into some of that last time, what occupational labor is, but basically that's just work. It's things that people get paid for, even if it's not your job, you know. Anyway, so let's go ahead and jump into 36. Now, here's a very literal English translation. 7 days you shall bring burnt offerings to Yahweh. In day the 8th, convocation holy, it will be to you. And literally it's make come you, so it's and you bring burnt offerings to Yahweh, assembly, she or it, because remember the he and the she in Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, is the way they say it, because it's a what do you call that? Gender. What do you call that when you use gender in a language? Gender specific. Let's just do that. So they use the word he and the word she, but they do mean it, as as the it, it. Then it says all work service, not you shall make they. So you're not supposed to work. So we start off with Shivat Yamim. So 7 days, and these are 24-hour days. They're not because Yom can mean bazillions upon bazillions upon bazillions times infinity and beyond. There is no time limit on the word Yom, unless you put one there. So when they say the first day of creation, right? Well, that could have been hundreds of trillions of years times infinity and beyond. There is no limit to how long that first day could have been. Besides the fact you don't have a sun and a moon until the 4th day, right? So how do you have a 24-hour period without a sun and a moon? Not even possible. So the examples I usually give are when God said, in the day they were in Egypt. Well, that was 430 years. They call that a day because it's a how would we put that in English so that anybody can understand that? It's a period of time. It's something happened during that time, and that time happened to be 430 years. Or what about the day they were in the wilderness? That's the 40 years that they were going, traveling through the wilderness, heading to the promised land. That God called that a day. He used the word Yom. So Yom does not connect directly to a 24-hour day period unless it actually is connected to a 24-hour period of time. And so anyway, you have 7 days. Ta ke rivu. Now that is the way that would have been pronounced back in those days. You shall bring they. So you all, it's in plural, you all, you, speaking of those of us who reading the work. So you all shall bring, and then of course it has the plural at the end, they. So everyone who's involved in this, you're supposed to bring something. That's to approach, to come near. So but this isn't of the idea of you going from over there to over here. Yeah, that's part of the idea, but it's of you bringing something from over there to over here, right? So they use the word approach, because if you're going from over there to over here, then you're approaching here from over there. Anyway, you guys get the idea, I hope. And then it says ish, just the word. Well, we know that's burnt offerings. It's not just the word for fire. They'll say it's a sacrifice. It's a burnt sacrifice, a sacrifice that includes burning something. But in the Hebrew Bible, there's at least one place where this word was used of a sacrifice that's not a burnt sacrifice. So we know here that it's going to be a burnt sacrifice because of what else is said in the sentence. And it says La Yahweh, so it's to Yahweh. We also know that these are 24-hour day periods because of what was said previously and what will be said afterwards. So we know that these are 24-hour periods of time. So it says you'll bring it to Yahweh by Yom, so that's in day Ha-Shemini. That's where we get specific, in the 8th day. Mikra, so that's your convocation. That's the calling together of an assembly. It can be done in a lot of different ways. Somebody can just get up and yell really loud and say it's time to have our meeting. Somebody can hit a desk with a gavel, time to start a meeting. Somebody can blow a shofar and it's time to start a meeting. Or somebody can say on the 14th day of the so-and-so month, we'll have a meeting, right? So there's a lot of different ways to call a meeting, but this is of calling a meeting, of setting or scheduling a meeting. But it's not just any meeting. It is Kodesh. It is a holy meeting. So if it's Kodesh, that means it's set aside. In particular, it's set aside for God. It's something that is consecrated to God. And given that God said, these are my meetings, they probably didn't even need to say they were holy. We should know that. But of course, we're being told that. So it will be a holy meeting. Lachem, it will to you. Those of you who are participating need to understand that you should be treating this as if it's holy. So if it is, say, there's a story in the New Testament. Some of you guys will know about this, and it was around before the time of the New Testament. The sages taught this story way before the New Testament was written, but it's repeated in the New Testament, and it changed up a little bit because the Rabbim, when they learned these meshalim, these parables, they would change them up, make them their own, change them up a little bit. And there's this story about this king who goes out and he tells his people, let's have a big celebration. It's a wedding celebration. And so they send their people out to tell everybody, hey, the king's having a celebration on the so-and-so day at so-and-so time. Well, nobody shows up. And then he tells them, well, we've already, slaughtered the animals. We've got all this food that's just going to go to waste. Just go out and find anybody and everybody you can, but make sure they know that this is a wedding feast, right? And so somebody shows up at that wedding feast not dressed for a wedding feast. You did not show up in your everyday work clothes or your PJs or something like that, like they do nowadays. You go to Walmart and have people in there wearing PJs. But you show up in your finest clothing. And so somebody shows up not in their finest clothing, knowing that where they're going, and they're showing all kinds of disrespect for this king. And well, that does not go well for that person. Oh, smacker! I somehow inadvertently do what? All right, thank you. Anyway, so it does not bode well, right? Because that was important, that knowing that it was a wedding thing, you needed to dress up for the wedding. Well, this is the same thing with the calling it Kodesh. You need to treat this like it's important. You should probably dress up. Just throwing that out there. It's one thing if you're wearing your best. Your best may not be all that great, but that's what you wear, your best. You make sure it's clean and that sort of thing, spruce up some way. You should be clean. Your clothing should be clean. And by the way, Shabbat, like days like today, you should have showered and you should be wearing something nice and clean. You should not be rolling around in your bed just listening in. Just saying. And now, if you're listening to this after the fact, that's different. But if you're being a part of this live, yeah, you should have your shower and you should be wearing something decent. And that is according to the Bible. We've been through the laws. I've already taught you all that stuff, but we haven't been over any of that in a long time. But that's what makes it holy. I've talked about how this talit that I have on, only time I wear this is during holy meetings. So I wear it every Shabbat, and I wear it when we have our other meetings as well. And I pay attention once they start to break down, because these things are they break down relatively quickly. They start getting little holes in them and stuff like that. I get a new one, but I only wear them for this. Even this shirt, these pants, the socks, the shoes that I have on, they're only for this. Now, you guys don't have to go to that degree, but the ones who lead the people do. We're required to wear very specific clothing, and so we do. You guys are just supposed to, clean yourself up, clean your clothes up, and make sure the best you have, and that's what you're supposed to do. Anyway, our next word, vaYiqra, and again, that's how it would have been pronounced back then. That's to make come, so that's to bring, that's to approach, to bring near, and I've really kind of already told you what that means, so I'll move on to the next word, ish. And so here's how we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is a fire offering and not just fire. You shall bring the burnt offering, la Yahweh. So you will bring it for God Almighty. So this really better be your best offering, right? You don't want to be like, that story about the two brothers, and one of them brought good enough, and the other one brought his very best. Remember how that turned out? But you're bringing it to the creator of the universe, so it ought to be your best. Then it says azeret. So you have assembly. That's the pooling of the people together in this assembly. And this may not feel like an assembly because everybody in this group is, you're all over the United States, and every once in a while people from over in other parts of the world join in. And we don't even know who, more than half of the people that listen in, we don't even know who they are. We just know that people are doing that. Because we have anywhere from 50 to up into the hundreds of people who have already watched this by the time Google gets it on Google. So, and that's not every time. Sometimes it's just us, few. Other times, a lot of people watch, and we have no idea who they are. But anyway, that's an assembly. Even though we're not all in the same building, we're still assembling together for this holy meeting. All right. But this idea of azeret, the thing that we really need to know is that it comes with the idea of restraint. It is to restrain, to hold back, to detain anyone anywhere, to be gathered together, from the idea of restraining or compelling. That may make more sense to say compelling rather than restraint. In other words, it's mandatory. You have to come to this particular uh, feast. And we're, in this particular case, speaking of Sukkot. Then it says heave. Now, this is that, I was speaking about that earlier, heave. It means literally sheep, right? But we're using it for the word it. It. It is an assembly. Then we follow that with kol avodah. So any, every, all. Kol is all inclusive. Although I will say at times they use the word kol hyperbolically, but so you're saying every, any, all, whatever those words are, avodah. So that's service. That's from the same word where we get the word servant. And this is the service of a servant, right? So it's to labor, it's work, it's what you do in your business, what you do in your office. It's of what they call rustic labor, which is agricultural, or it's stuff you do with your hands, right? But this includes stuff that you do in an office, right? It's whatever you do for your living. And then it says lo ta'asu, where that's from asa, properly to labor, to work about anything, to make, to produce, to labor, to manufacture, to fabricate, right? So it's the work that you do in service of your paycheck, basically. All right, so our translation: 7 days you shall bring fire offerings to Yahweh. On the 8th day will be to you a Mikra Kodesh, a holy meeting, and you will bring fire offerings to Yahweh. So you've already been told that you got to bring fire offerings every day. This one's telling you that you got to bring this fire, or this portion is telling you that you have to bring a fire offering on the 8th day to Yahweh. It, speaking of Sukkot, is a compelled assembly. You shall not do any of your melacha avodah, any of your occupational labor. None. This is not a day for you to work. Okay, so moving on to 37, and again, this is very literal English. These appointed times Yahweh that shall call out they with them convocations holy to make approach burnt offerings to Yahweh, burnt offerings and gift sacrifices and drink offerings, word day in day it. So ele, these, moadai. So these are the appointed times, is what I like to say in English. I like to call them appointed times, because they are appointed. They're set. They're preset. We have known at the minimum since the time of sorry, time of Moshe, that these are the things that are going to happen at on the same month and day every year. The appointed times. They are set by God. They are called by those who are in charge. In the olden days, it would have been the priests, but they wouldn't have been the only ones. The rabbin, the moreh, whoever, somebody's going to call these assemblies, right? And then, let's see, we've got, these are the appointed times Yahweh. So they belong to God and God alone. They do not belong to the Jews. And that's another thing that I noticed when I was translating the New Testament Greek. It calls these feasts the Feast of the Jews. And we understand this is how long from Moshe to the first century? 1,500, 2,000 years, something like that. yeah, because you go all the way back to Abraham, that's 5,000. Anyway, 1,500, 2,000, something like that. So I'm not even sure. Uh, they were called the feasts of God. But you get all those years later, well, who's carrying out God's feast? The Jews. And so it became known as the Feast of the Jews. And the New Testament actually called it that, the Feast of the Jews. That's not really correct. That's absolutely not correct at all, because God said they belong to him. If God said they belong to him, that's who they belong to. So is it wrong or evil to call them the Feast of the Jews? No, it's not. So then it says, Asher Tik Re'u. So these are the ones that you shall. I mean, they put this is kara, which is to cry out with a loud, passionate voice, is a really good way to explain what this word means. But they've added the tav to the beginning of it, and that makes it an absolute command. You're going to call these. You're going to make sure that these things happen. And then it says otam, which it's the word et, which is really just an arrow, and it has no meaning, but they've added the on at the end, so that would be with, or not with, be them. So we say with them normally. Mikra'e. So these are convocations in plural, which you know what happens if you know anything about the grammar of the biblical period. You know that the reason why this is in plural is because this is eternal. It's going to go on. It's not going to stop. That's why it's plural. It's why so many people don't get the things being written in the future tense and the past tense. If it goes on and on and on, it'll be written in the future tense. If it ends, it'll be written in the past tense, even if it hasn't happened quite yet, right? So there's a lot of things about the grammar that, people don't know these grammar rules, and so they're like, well, they were really loosey-goosey with the grammar in the Hebrew Bible. No, they weren't. They were very exact, and that's one of the reasons. So we have the Mikra, so these are the calling together. These are the appointed times, the appointed meetings. You're calling all of this stuff together. And then it says Kodesh. So this is holy convocations. These are holy meetings. Then we have Leha Keriv. Again, this is the way it would have been pronounced back then. To make approach, to go from over there to over here. We've already had this word. Ish, burnt offerings. La Yahweh. So they are for Yahweh. This is Olah, and we have burnt offerings yet again. So we have two ways to say burnt offerings. You can say Ish, which is fire. So that turns into burnt offering in this case. And then you have Olah, which also means burnt offering. Then you have Uminecha, and a gift offering. This is, it can be said of the tithe. The tithe is actually a gift. It's a kind of a forced gift, and here you're being told you have to bring a gift offering, so it's a forced gift. Anyway, Zevach, which is sacrifice. So you have a gift sacrifice. And this is actually the word for the actual slaying. This is the killing the animal, skinning it, cutting it up for the purpose of putting it on a barbecue, cooking it, and eating it. That's what this word is for. Unesachim, well, that's drink offerings. Then they say libation. So you get this idea of someone taking, liquid, usually wine, and pouring it on a griddle and and all that. Well, there was no griddle for them to do this with. So that's not exactly what's happening here. But you're bringing a drink offering, and because they use in the dictionaries and the lexicons, they'll say because of the pouring out of the liquid, and they'll use like metal being melted and it's poured out and stuff like that. As an example, that's not what this word means. This is, you're going to bring something to drink. And it says devar, so that's a word. And it's speech, discourse, used in a lot of different ways. But this is giving very exact directions. It's here's step 1, step 2, step 3, to try to clearly make sure you're arranging your words in an order. You're putting them in place very purposefully so that they can be followed. So you have a day, then, or not day, you have the word, then it says yom. So you have word, yom. So word, day, beyomo. So now this is in, yom, day, then it's the word for he, which is it. So word, day, in, day, it. Obviously, it's an idiom. So here's our translation, and I'll get to the idiom. These are the moadai. These are the appointed times of Yahweh, that they shall proclaim in them a holy meeting, a mikra kodesh, to make sacrifices. It says make, draw near, literally, but what are they talking about? Make sacrifices. Ish, fire offerings, to Yahweh. Then it says olah, so it's a burnt offering, and mincha zevach, so a donation sacrifice, and zevach nesachim, and a drink offering. In this case, so you have the day word in day it. Remember that? So it's a declared rule. It's how do you say this and make it make sense? It's a declared set of rules on specific days. So you're going to follow the rules on this specific day to do exactly what you're being told. Okay. So 38. From to alone Sabbath, and this is Sabbath in plural, Yahweh, and from beside gifts your, and from beside all vows your, and from beside all free will offerings your, that shall give they to Yahweh. And it's really important that we understand what it means, and from beside. Because it's a very literal way of translating it. So it says milvad. They've added the mem to the front of the word. So you have from to alone. Because your word is vod, and they've added the mem lamed, and then vod. So from to alone. This is separation, something that is separated. It's a part taken from the whole, which that comes from the mem. Then the lamed is 2 or 4, and then you have your word separation. And it'll make more sense in a little bit. So then you have Shabbatot. So this is Sabbath in plural. And, Shabbat is to rest. It for the most part, it means to rest. The primary idea appears to be that of to sit down, to sit still. Used of men as opposite to labor. Don't work. Because you're not resting if you're working, right? But again, this is in plural. I've already kind of told you why it's in plural, right? Because this is eternal. So then you have Yahweh. So these Sabbath that are going to happen every year at this time, they belong to Yahweh. Then it says, U milevad. So, and from beside. Here we get to that funky one. That's we already done that. I've gotten myself a little. Oh, Okay, yeah. Oh, from, to, alone. Yeah. Is that our next word? Yeah. Oh, well, they've added the vav in front of all of that. So it's a while ago it was from, to, beside. So now it's and, from, to, beside. So it's the same thing. It's of that separation thing. What are we saying? Maybe we should use the word other than or along with, uh, right beside of. You guys starting to get what's going on here? Mat notechem. So that's your gift offering. So along with this gift offering, along with all of these other things that are going to happen. So you have gift offering, then you have mi levad. So there's your word again. In addition to, let's put it that way. So in addition to your gift offerings, and then it says, in addition to all need rechem, all of your vows. It's like at the what do you call that? New Year's Eve, everyone says, well, I'm going to stop drinking this year, or I'm going to lose weight this year. You're making a vow, right? But these are vows that you're making to God. So you probably better not make a vow that you're not going to follow through with. Don't tell God you're going to lose weight, because you probably won't. But you're supposed to make vows to God. Tell him that you're going to do something and do it. Don't not do it. So in addition to the gifts, and in addition to all of the vows that you're going to make to God, then mi levad. So, and in addition to kol nidvotechem, in addition to all of your free will offerings, these are, like I said, it can be a tithe. It can be just, hey, I just want to give an extra little kick to God here to show my appreciation for all that he's done for us this year. This is asher titnu. In addition to all of those things, this is in addition to that which you shall give, and you shall maybe place. I'll have to see what the next word is. Give, we'll go with that. La Yahweh. For Yahweh. You will give for Yahweh. You give for Yahweh, right? So when you give an offering to a minister, whether it's a rabbi, a more, your nasieh, nasi, your navi, your prophet, your preacher, I mean, whoever, when you're giving something to that person, you should never see it as you're giving it to that person. You should see it as if you're giving that to God. So, but Rob, there's so many people that are just getting rich off of it. Well, that's between them and God. That's none of your business. You give your tithe and you make your offerings as if you gave it to God. Would you ever ask God to give it back? You shouldn't be. I'm just saying, don't ever do that. So if you gave to, some television evangelist, and then later found out that he was, building multi-million-dollar houses to live in and flying around in private jets and blah, 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 well, it's none of your business. You gave it to God. You didn't give it to that person. If that's going to bother you, find someone better to give your money to. But let that other stuff go, because you're supposed to give all of this to God. It doesn't matter what happens after that. That's between God and that person. Okay, so here's my translation. Along with the Shabbatot, the Sabbath in plural, along with those, the Sabbath of God, and along with your gifts, and along with your vows, and along with your voluntary offering that you shall give to Yahweh, comma, because whoever put the chapter and verse together broke this sentence up, and so we're going to have to pick up with the next part of the sentence. 39 is actually part of 38, is what I'm trying to tell you. And so here's my literal translation of 39. Indeed, in 15, so we would say 15, in 15 day, to new moon, the seventh, in gathering you, produce the land, shall feast they, feast Yahweh, 7 days, in day the first Shabbaton, and day the 8th Shabbaton. Again, so it's a single Sabbath happening, one on the first day, one on the 8th day, but it's in plural because this is eternal. So, indeed, surely. You can even say amen, except that's not the word they used, but it's kind of the same thing. No doubt, there's all kinds of things you could put there and they would all be correct. But I have indeed. Bachamisha, in five. So we have indeed, in 5, asar yom, so in 15, so in 15, we would probably put it in English on the 15th Yom day, on the 15th day would make sense to us. In Hebrew, us American, English speaking Americans, in Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, we get that this is on the 15th day, right? So it's good to translate it that way in English. Then it says La Chodesh, not Kodesh, Chodesh. Got to clear your throat when you say it. That's a new moon. So we say month in English. I like to say new moon because that's what it is. But if you don't quite get it, that's on the 15th day of that month. Ha Shevi'i, what month? The 7th month. That Shevi'i is 7th, or 7th in this case. Be'as pechem, in or when you gather. When you're getting together, everyone's coming together on that day for your assembly, right? That's what makes it the assembly of the people. So it's to gather et tevuat. So you're gathering in the produce. And boy, this really gets lost here. It's used of corn flour, of the wine press, of the vineyard, grain, profits, metaphorically, fruit or result. It is the result of words spoken or deeds done. There's a lot to this. It's not about produce as in food we eat. It's about that which we produce, right? So if you're an attorney and you're doing legal stuff and people are paying you for that, that's your produce. If you're a medical doctor and you're in there healing people and whatever medical doctors do and you get paid for that, that's your produce. The fact that people are healed, that's not your produce. That's the result of your produce, right? So this isn't just about food. It's about whatever it is that brings you your paycheck. Let's put it that way. Haaretz, in the land. So that's in that, wherever you live, it's assumed that since this was written to the Jews and they were going to the land of Israel, a lot of people will limit it to Israel, but when have the Jews only lived in Israel, right? Tahugo, that's from Hag. That's the going around in a circle. And you've seen, I'm sure in movies, you've seen a bunch of Jewish guys grab hands and spin around in a circle, or Jewish women. You see that. I think I've seen that in one movie. It's usually guys doing that because they used to hold hands and dance in circles. And because of the Middle Ages, it became guys with guys, girls with girls. It wasn't like that in the early days. Nobody cared. But once you get the Western prudish world comes into play, then the Jews follow after the pagans, having now, thousands of years later, don't even know that, but whatever. So it's to party, it's to be giddy, to dance around like drunkards. I mean, that's part of the actual explanation of Hag. And so we're saying they've added the Tate to the front of it. It's a command. You're going to have a party. This is et Hag. It's the same word. What happens when you say the same word twice? This is really important. Et Hag. So it's pointing out the Hag for the second time, but then that's followed by Yahweh. So this is a celebration that belongs to Yahweh. It's not even your celebration, it's his celebration. And it says Shivat, so the 7 Yamim is your next word. So 7 days you'll have this party. Then it says Bayom, so in day ha-rishon, so in the first day, Shabbaton. You will have the Sabbath on the first day of this Hag, of this celebration, this Hag Yahweh, this celebration that belongs to God Almighty. Then it says Uvayom, and in the day Ha-Shemini, the 8th day, Shabbaton. That'll be a Sabbath as well. So we think of Shabbat as happening from Friday night when the sun goes down, and it lasts until Saturday night when the sun goes down again. That 24-hour period is what we think of as the Shabbat. And that is your official weekly Shabbat. But these holidays follow the moon, right? So they wind up at different times. This holiday, your first one can be on a Tuesday, and that means the second one's going to be on the following Tuesday. Well, those are Shabbat. You treat them exactly like you would the one that we have every week. They're exactly the same. They are not different. So Shabbat can happen any day of the week, and it can often happen 2 times in the same week, sometimes even 3. And they're all to be treated exactly the same. You don't work. It's a day of rest. In this case, you're going to have a big old party on that day of rest as well. So here's our translation. Indeed, on the 15th day of the 7th new moon, in your gatherings of the produce of the land shall be a feast, a 7-day feast of Yahweh. On the first day will be a Shabbat, and on the 8th day will be a Shabbat. Pretty straightforward. Okay, we've got plenty of time. Okay, so moving on to 40. Ooh, maybe I should push this a little bit because it was just 44. Okay, maybe. So our literal translation of 40. And take them to you in day the first fruit, tree majestic, palms, palm trees, branch, tree, foliage, and darkness, wadi, and rejoice you to faces Yahweh, God's you 7 days. We've had this a lot. This has been a reoccurring verse throughout all of the law. But it's ule kachtem, so kach is to take. So we have and take them, so they will take. It's to gather up, to take something. You're going to go over there, you're going to pick up that limb and take it somewhere, right? Lachem, so you'll take to you bayom in the day ha-rishon. So in the first day, you're going to go out, you're going to grab something for yourself. Peri, that's fruit. Now, that's not necessarily an apple or an orange. Because if you live your life lying and doing people wrong, that's the fruit of your life. That's the produce, the fruit that you put out there. So it's not just fruit itself. Okay, well, in this case, it may be because it's saying X is your next word. So it's the fruit of a tree. Well, the fruit of a tree, again, is not necessarily apples and oranges. The fruit of a tree, well, that's leaves, that's limbs, It's bougie stuff that gets all over your car. If you park under one at certain times of the year, all of that's the fruit of the tree. That's what comes from that tree. Then it says hadar. Well, that's I use the word majestic. This is a tree that's full of limbs and full of leaves and stuff like that. So we'll say majestic. This is one that's just really it's because it's on the word ornament or adorned. So this is tree the trees that are really packed with whatever it is that grows on that tree. Then it says kapot. So now that's the word for palms. Then it says te marin, palms of the palm tree. Va'anaf, well, there's your word for branch, and then it's etz, so branches of trees. Avot, well, that's foliage. Va'arve, okay. The word it's used of a river and it's used of a stream, whether it's a stream or a river that constantly flows like a fountain or that springs up only when there's rain and snow, and maybe disappears later on, used of a wadi, which is why I think I use that word. Um, oh, no, well, nahal is where I get the word. Well, it's the same word, isn't it? Mhm. No, these are two different words. So you have arve. So you've got the stream, if you will, but then nahal is the same thing. It's a stream. In the meaning given is exactly the same. Maybe I'll get to that a little here. I'll try to clear it up here in a minute. Then you have usemachtem, and that's to rejoice, to be glad. The primary idea appears to be that of joyful and cheerful countenance. The if you are happy, your face is, you have a happy countenance. You are, they'll say you're glowing or you're lit up or whatever. Where if you're sad, it's you're drooping and dark and stuff like that. So, but this is to rejoice in this case. Lipne, so that's two faces, which is where we get in the presence of or before. This is Yahweh Elohechem, Yahweh your God. Oh, I got a lot of stuff under that word. Then it says Shivat Yamin for 7 days. So you're partying hard for 7 days. And you will take to yourselves on the first day the fruits of majestic trees, palms of the palm trees, tree branches, foliage of the brook, the streams and the rivers of the brook, and you will rejoice in the presence of Yahweh, your God, for 7 days. So those 7 days are all about having this great big party. The 8th day is the closing of the party and all that kind of stuff. This is about the 7 that you do ahead. Okay. 41. And feast them with ye feast to Yahweh 7 days in year, statute eternal to generations you all. In new moon, the 7th, shall feast they with it. They're with he, it, the way we think of it. Vechagotem. So hag, you getting it? And feast them. So, and they will feast. Oto, that's your arrow. Chag, they will feast this feast la Yahweh to God. Shivat Yamin for 7 days. Chukat, this is a statute, that which is established or defined, spoken always of a singular law or an ordinance. You can look at it that way, it doesn't matter. But it's also used of customs and practices. Tradition. Yeah. And it's olam, so there's eternal. Going to go on forever. Le dorotechem, that's to your generations. Everyone that comes after you is going to do this, or at least they're supposed to. Bachodesh, so it's in the new moon. Ha Shevi'i, the seventh new moon. Ta Chogu, so they shall feast. This is a command. Oto, so they will feast. And then it's followed by basically an arrow. So what we have here, and I should have said this last time, but I didn't pick up on it. So my translation, and a major feast to Yahweh. Why did I do that? Because remember it said Chag 2 times in a row. What happens? It's explanation. It makes it bigger, more important. So we say, and a major feast, is at least how I decided to say it, to Yahweh, 7 days in a year, an eternal statute to all your generations. In the seventh new moon, you shall feast in it. No getting around it. So, and I'd like to close this one out this week, so we may go a little over, but not, I don't think a whole lot. 42, in Sukkot shall dwell you all 7 days. All the native in Israel dwell they in Sukkot. So Bas Sukkot, this is the in Sukkot. That's the name of the festival, and it's named that way. Why? Because this is a tent. It's made out of all those things that you gathered up on day one, or maybe it's just decorated with those things from day one. It will depend on whether you have a tent or not, But this is saying in the Sukkot, we're starting off with that. In these tents, Teshvu, you shall dwell in this tent. 1 day out of that, for a couple of hours, you'll have dinner, right? No. That is not what God's law says. It says, Shivat Yamin. You're going to dwell in these tents for 7 days. 7 days. All 24 hours. Kol ha'ezra. So all that I will raise up. And they give the word native, something that's from that area, but it's to rise, used of the sun, also applied to light. In the derivatives, also to a fetus breaking forth from the womb. It's of a plant springing up through the ground. It's a rising of a light. So that which raises up, Yisrael. So we can say in Israel, right? Or maybe it's with Yisrael. Everyone who rises up with Yisrael. Then it says Yeshvu. They will dwell. Ba Sukkot, in those tents. So our translation, you will dwell, you will hang out, you'll sleep in, you'll live in, you will dwell in Sukkot 7 days. All that I will raise up with Yisrael will dwell in Sukkot. So this idea, some of the sages said, well, the only people that have to do that, they have to actually stay in this sukkah, is somebody who lives in Israel. Really? Most of the sages disagree with that. Most of the sages say no matter where you are, if you're living according to God's law, you are raised up with Yisrael. So no matter where you are, you're supposed to stay inside these things for 7 whole days and nights. because it'll be on the 8th day that you'll have the closing convocation, and then you'll go home. Okay, so I've got 2 more. Yeah, I'm pushing it, but I'm going to get there. Our next one. To purpose he know they, generations your, for in Sukkot make dwell me, children Yisrael, and make go me, them from land Mitzrayim, I Yahweh God you. Lema'an. Because it's for this purpose. This is the reason God's going to explain to us why he wants all of his children who live according to the law to dwell in a temporary tent made of, trees, or made of a tent with trees, decorating it, however you want to look at that. It doesn't matter. So that you'll know, so that you'll see, so that you will perceive and understand. Go rotehem. All of your generation, everybody for every generation is going to go out and experience this so that they can understand. Ki va Sukkot, for in Sukkot, for intense, Hoshabti, I made them dwell. God made his people dwell in temporary housing, in tents for 40 years. And he's only asking us to do it for 1 week every year. Et B'nai Yisrael, so I made the children of Yisrael live in these tents, Be'chotzi, so in make go me, so made them go forth, made them live in and travel, live in these things while they traveled. Otam eretz, throughout the land, he made them live in these tents in the land when they went out from Mitzrayim. So we call that Egypt these days. Then it says Ani Yahweh. That most people, I think, don't know this, but that means when he says I am Yahweh, he's saying I've commanded this. Elohim, I am Yahweh your God. You will do this. Okay, let's see. So my translation. The reason why, this is my translation, not me giving you the reason why. It says the reason why he's making them to dwell is so that your generations will know that I made the children of Israel dwell in Sukkot when I brought them out of Egypt. I, Yahweh, your God. So what happens when you actually stay in tents? Well, you find out, like we did one year. We went to this place and we were setting up for Sukkot and all that. And the people invited my wife and I to come out. They wanted me to do a bunch of teaching and my wife to do a bunch of singing and all that kind of stuff. So they set up a motorhome for us to stay in. And, this is our early days of following the Torah, and it didn't quite get the whole temporary dwelling thing just yet. I mean, a motorhome is a temporary dwelling, but you could argue whether that was acceptable or not. But so everybody went out and they set up their tents, and my wife and I went to sleep that night. And when we got up in the morning, the motorhome was completely, it was all nice and comfortable and all that. Step out the door and it was like, oh my God, the temperature had dropped down. It had gone from a really nice 70-something degree weather day down to freezing overnight. There was all these people that had come out there. They're all sitting in huddled up in cars with their heaters turned on. Everybody was freezing. So some years it's very cold. Some years it's very, very hot. Some years you get lots of wind. Some years it just rains and you got the muck and the mire and all of that. That's how your generations understand that sometimes with God, it's a beautiful day. Sometimes with God, it's a rough day. Sometimes it's a rainy, muddy, mucky day. The good, the bad, the ugly, all of it comes with your walk with God. Okay, so I have just one more, I think, right? About 44 of these. So then it ends with, and he spoke Moshe appointed times Yahweh to children of Israel. vaYiqra, so it's, and he spoke, and he said, he had conversation. Who was the he? Moshe. So Moshe spoke about Moadai, the appointed times, Yahweh, of our God Yahweh. El B'nai Yisrael. Thus Moshe spoke concerning the appointed times of Yahweh to the children of Israel. Shalom v'shalom.
The blessing, Ivrit. Yevarecha Yahweh v'yish merecha. Ya'er Yahweh panai v'lecha v'hunecha. Yisa Yahweh panai v'lecha v'yasim lecha shalom. And in English, may Yahweh cause you to lie down so that you may rest. May he touch and caress you. May he prepare you for what is ahead. May he watch over you. May he keep you from harm. May he cause goodness to grow in you and take away the bad. May he arrange your life and cause you to flourish. May he cheer you up and gladden your heart. May he cause his light to shine through you. May he show you tenderness, favor, and love in his presence. May he show you kindness and be delicate towards you. May he show you his generosity, mercy, compassion, and desire for you as it comes forth from the depths of his soul. May he lift you out of your pit and deliver you from the things that hold you prisoner. May he draw you to his chest and cast his eyes on yours. May he show you his love and desire for you as he cradles you in his arms. May he bear your punishment and pardon you of your sin. May he take you for his bride. May he establish a foundation in you. May he place his name on your heart and mind and make your body his temple. May you be his treasure. May you always be on his mind. May he draw you near and comfort you when you are afraid. May he assure you there is nothing to fear because he is with you. May you and all that concerns you be at peace because he is your friend. Amen.